Instead of reaching out for an oracle deck to reflect back to you, you're actually using this muscle, which we all have, to really navigate what that true and honest opinion is for you. My guidance is going to be different than your guidance, and your ability to tap into your gifts might open a door for you that you literally never look back on. Dear Miss Craft, this is a transmission from the seventh dimension. I'm Camille Craft, and about 3.5 years ago, I made a decision to use the eclipse portals to quantum leap. I'm going to show you on this podcast how to specifically create revenue, money, impact, change, and visibility using the power within you. It is through the astrological impact of astrology that I've been able to create a 7-figure brand, go completely viral, reach 200K months with consistent ritual. And I'm going to break down specifically how you are going to do that in your life without having to sacrifice more time, your identity, and your life purpose. So if you're ready to master making money but need to find your life purpose, this is for you. Okay, today I'm going to be talking about how I use my intuitive gifts, and I'm going to give you some resources on how to expand yours for business. So, a lot of times there are, like I said in the podcast in the previous episode, that there are a lot of opportunities that are at our fingertips that we can't see because of our belief systems. And so, one of the biggest things that I've learned is that I can tap into my intuition. I can tap into my higher guidance. It is all knowing and all seeing. However, this might be a little bit different than what people think of as a gut response or your intuition or your body, which absolutely is a foundational signal, right? We need to have a connection with our body. But when we're tapping into our highest guidance, our true creator self, the energy this is why I use invocations in my work, because here's the thing, and this is what I've learned, and it's not to scare anybody, but it's like you can tap into so many things. You can sit down with somebody who calls themselves an energy worker and says all the right things, and yet they're not doing integrous work or shadow work on themselves. And so this is why it's so important for you to have your own tools and gut check responses on how to make these decisions, because ultimately, when we're making decisions from the mind, we might not see a golden opportunity that's right in our fingertips, that, literally could change our lives. So basically, every major business decision I have has come through my intuition, my channeling, my higher self, whatever you want to call it, God, source, creative, whatever you want to say. And so ultimately, there are different words and different invocations that I use for specific things. If you have done any of my actual recorded rituals, you will know in those rituals, I specifically have you ask specific questions so that you get the internal guidance for yourself. When you're new to ritual and when you're new to channeling, it might seem like you're not getting anything. And I totally get it. When I started on this path about 15 years ago, I felt like I wasn't getting very clear guidance. However, the reason is because my nervous system wasn't really ready to take those actions yet. But now that I have rewired my identity to be completely in the space of sovereignty, I'm no longer thinking in like, oh, okay, only this is available to me, right? I learned to trust that guidance and build and innovate. And it's one of my favorite things of being an entrepreneur is that I can have an idea or get a download for something, create it, and cash is rolling in the next day. That's how good I've gotten at everything, right? And that's what I want for you and anyone who knows business. That's the power of entrepreneurship. But when we are learning how to navigate that, or we're learning how to trust our spiritual gifts more and more, you might be asked to pivot. So I always like to start off with the signs of a pivot, which is ultimately basically everything's just falling apart. You can't make sales the same way that you have been, or maybe something just feels off, basically. You know what I mean? Or maybe you're making a lot, you're having like the perfect life on the outside, but you feel like crap on the inside, right? There's so many different things. And so, one of the biggest things that has really helped me have that courageous action to pivot, especially from the external where everything seems like it's going right, but my intuition is telling me to pivot, that's what has quantum leaped me, right? It hasn't been when things like are feel hunky dory for me. It is basically where everyone sees my life or sees the things I've created and they're like, yeah, she's successful or whatever it is. And then, but internally, I'm getting the guidance to shift. And that's actually how this podcast came around. So ultimately, the way that I tap in is really it's typically in the mornings. Obviously, you have your witchy woo time at whatever time you have. Like some people are night owls, some people are creatives in the super early morning. I'm an early morning person. I've been like that since I was a kid. And so ultimately, what I always tune in with is I always start with breath work. I always, ground my body. I do a little bit of chanting and then I meditate. And when I'm in the meditation, I ask and I use this invocation. I am now your name. I'm now your name's true creator self. I now ask and command for my ego to step aside so I can be the clear conduit of the highest, most optimal guidance on my next steps. I now allow for any fear, overwhelm, angst, depression, whatever you're struggling with to be completely nullified in my mind, body, and spirit. And I ask that only the highest, most optimal answers with instant solutions for me are now placed into my being. And then I just listen. If I need to ask something specific, right? Say it's like, okay, do I launch this offer, or whatever it is? I will ask, please show me the outcome of doing this. Right. And then I'll feel it in my body. The next thing I'll say is, okay, please show me the outcome of doing this. And then I'll feel it in my body. And this is typically how I make decisions. Legacy builders understand divine timing. While others manifest randomly, you'll know which cosmic windows amplify intentions by 10x. 2026 Ritual Planner, every cosmic money window, eclipse portals, Venus transits, lunar cycles, mapped with manifestation rituals. Same cosmic timing I've used for seven-figure spiritual entrepreneurs. 2026 cosmic windows won't repeat for another 12 plus years. Miss now, wait until 2038. The complete manifestation calendar is only $37. Spiritual entrepreneurs don't leave timing to chance. I have had a very analytical mind in the past, and I would say that was more getting in the way than anything, because when I was trying to make decisions from what seemed logical, um, it would always roadblock me, and or I would need to learn or like kind of do something similar to what's out there. And that a lot of people give you that business advice, right? It's like, oh, like look at your competitors, see what they're doing, blah blah. And I'm like, I just don't agree with that, because honestly, you're here, you have a certain trajectory, like you're here to innovate unless you're actually just boring, And so ultimately, anyone listening to this podcast is probably not that. So we are going to go into, you know, ultimately like how I work with that and how to make business decisions. Because when you're using your gifts and your body as a tool, you're going to tap into things. Maybe something sounds like a good idea. Maybe it has all the bells and whistles. But I don't know if anyone else on this podcast, but for me, whenever something has been super shiny and bright and I go after it, it usually doesn't deliver. Usually the things that are kind of like covered that, most people are not looking at, that's the thing. That's the gold mine. That's the piece, right? So with that said, those are the ways that I make my decisions. I ask to be shown what is the outcome of this decision. Okay. What is the outcome of this decision? And sometimes I've made decisions going into certain containers. I've made decisions of really mastering what that is. And another thing that I would like to tell you is that if you are new at channeling, one of the easiest ways is just to record yourself on your phone or with chat GBT or like AI. Like that's, I just put my voice recorder out and I just like, when I'm starting to channel, I just speak the words. And that's how I started to channel 15 years ago is I would listen, I would ask, and then I would say stuff. And then basically it didn't really make very much, like it made some sense, but it was very esoteric. And I don't think because I believe that my guides and the energy that I'm tapping into is esoteric. That's how the language of the universe, right? So ultimately, I had to like, okay, what does this mean? Like, I had to be more specific with what I was asking. Like, please tell me or please show me if this is the highest, most optimal path for me and the outcome outcome of what this is, right? And so ultimately, instead of reaching out for an oracle deck to reflect back to you, you're actually using this muscle, which we all have, to really navigate what that true and honest opinion is for you, right? And so my guidance is going to be different than your guidance, and your ability to tap into your gifts might open a door for you that you literally never look back on. One of the most powerful things about people who create high amounts of wealth is that they're able to see a solution to something that people have not even thought about yet. Think about, like, I don't know, Steve Jobs or something like that. It's like all of these innovative people, when you start to look into that, a lot of them worked with multidimensional facets, quantum physics, all of those things. And so ultimately, when we think about this, your channeling is your ability to tap into the quantum field, basically, your ability to tap into the field where everything is possible beyond the mindset or beyond the belief system or 3D world of what we've been told. And then you're going to create something new, right? And that's being the first of your kind. So ultimately, like I said, the seventh dimension, the moon dimension, fully open, this is what it looks like in practice. And so if you take my quiz, we have a quiz baked into Sona School, but if you take my quiz, you will be able to see what dimension you are imbalanced with, right? And where you're being blocked the most. And so ultimately, the moon is a seventh dimension. It's being able to tune into your inner world and being a divine conduit. And so when you are a divine conduit, you might get the guidance to completely pivot your business that leads you to seven figures. You might have an idea that is completely, no one's ever done before that makes you millions in a year. You might have all of those things. And it's because at some point, the level of success that you've created either is outdated or you have something bigger waiting for you. And that's when the pivot begins to come. So ultimately, you know, I always like to share through my personal experience, which is, at the time of the release of this podcast, I would say it was about 6 months. It was at winter solstice, actually, now that I put it together. Winter solstice of 2025, around that time, I had a very powerful spiritual, completely sober experience. Felt like I had taken like a pound of mushrooms. It was kind of insane. And, there was nothing other than what I think is the ritual work, maybe visiting Egypt. Like, I do really powerful ritual work that brought it on. And honestly, just, the right circumstances of me just being home and, my nervous system being ready to receive it. So that's when I started to shift a lot. And I always talk about this identity shift because I woke up, moving through that experience, um, and I've done all forms of, like, some psychedelic stuff like that. Nothing touched this. Right. And so the other thing that I want to talk about is that this did not feel bad. It was not a panic attack. It was not a psychic attack. It was not something that was bad. It felt like the extreme amount of love coming from within my being and within my heart. And so, the seven dimensions of faith they are rooted in the seven powers of Mary Magdalene. And then they're also rooted in, the interior castle and these different archetypes and things that I've studied. And so ultimately, when that happened, it just felt like, there's so many mystical texts that really speak to this, but a oneness with God, source, creative potential, whatever it is. And so ultimately, it was just this incredible, loving feeling. But over the next months, it was beginning to pull apart everything that I had done before. So Vital Mystic, and I love Vital Mystic and I love all my clients. So don't think I'm going away any way, shape, or form. But the woman who built that built it from grief. She built it from an identity of survival. She built it from the needing to heal, and needing to show, and very scared. I did honor my gifts, but I only honored them to a certain point. Like, I would hide behind astrology versus that, hey, you're just actually really psychic. Right. And so when this started to kind of unravel for me, it really became very clear that DMC really wanted to come through and this next stage. And, Vital Mystic is a 7-figure brand. I did not need to freaking do that. I had launched 25K masterminds. I was set for the year, and it was like almost every internal idea or every internal desire that I had before of creating wealth, more stability, travel, everything just began to crumble. And the only thing that I can, relate this to was right after my brother died. And when my brother died, everything, every goal, every identity, everything that ever mattered to me didn't matter anymore. Because when you go through that level of shock or loss, you can't rubber band yourself back, right? When you go through that level of lot, like just like moment, you start to question reality, you start to question everything. And I just remember back then and also now is just like the way that I was selling didn't feel aligned. What I was creating didn't feel aligned. The space that I was in didn't feel aligned. I had thoughts about running away from a business. Like it was like really identity rebirth. And ultimately, I think so many people who have hit a certain level of success experience this, but we don't talk about it because that part is like I talk about the two webs, right? The two webs of the Black Widow. One web is made for hunting and one web is a multidimensional fortress. And so that is, and the Black Widow is auspicious with that. It is one of the only spiders that creates two webs. And so when we have created or hunted or created a 3D level of success of our stability, like we've created a certain level of that, our dimensionality and our identity shifts and we start to yearn for something deeper, and that's when a big thing begins to happen, right? And so now I've been through this process multiple times, but that's this piece is that you can be holding a high level of success, but if you're not fueled by it, if you're not lit up by it, if it's not giving you everything in life that life truly has to offer, you start to question a lot of things. And so ultimately, DMC was born out of that. And it was very clear that DMC was a higher energetic, higher frequency based space. And it was very important that I wrote a book and that I channeled a lot for people on a massive level. And that's why we started. What is it? Was it perfect timing? No, because it's never perfect time. But, with that said, it's the same way that, I got the download to shut down my physical product line 4 years ago and go all in on a digital product line and coaching. And that skyrocketed. I didn't know what I was doing. And so I find myself back at that place with complete trust and faith and needing to create that jump. And so a lot of people don't talk about these identity shifts that we have, these moments in time where we get to choose. And you will know, you will be chosen for something. This is something that I speak about all the time is that when you are chosen for something, there is not a single thing in your field that cannot not support you for that, right? And so everything will be taken out. Everything will be taken out, but it's because you are here to bridge something new. So, I gave you guys the few steps that you need for channeling clear business guidance, and knowing, we talk a lot about chart timing and etc. in I Am Wealth Society. So if that's something that interests you, I would definitely come into the membership and see what that's about. If you're a business owner and you're wanting to learn how to use these kind of frequency energetics in your marketing and your messaging, that is going to be in Sona. And so ultimately, we are going to be preparing right now for the upcoming transitions, which is going to be Jupiter and Leo. We have a masterclass coming up for that. And then we also have the Jupiter Kazemi that is happening at the end of July as well. So with that said, here's the thing. Trust the pivot, trust the guidance. But if we are constantly, saying no to the universe, like if you're manifesting, okay, I'm ready for that next level of wealth, or I'm ready for that love of my life, or whatever it is, but we're not listening to the actual guidance that is truly for us, right? Or our purpose or our contract or what we're chosen for, we're kind of keeping it at bay. And so my invitation for you is to really think about what for you are those next steps? What is that pivot that the universe has been asking you to do for a long time that maybe we haven't been listening? And so when we start to open up, and I gave you guys the steps to channeling, tap in, do your breath work, get the Wim Hof app. Like I swear to you, it changes my life, changed my clients' lives, or if you do some other breath work practice, But, like follow the daily dose and start to tap in with that channeling. And I guarantee you're going to find some answers very quickly. That's today's spiritual guidance from the seventh dimension. Ready for live transmissions and daily drops on the current transits specifically for you? I've got you. Join my private Telegram channel via the link in the show notes. Remember, trust what you're feeling. Your true identity is already built. Just say yes.